Welcome back to the Health Marketing Collective, where strong leadership meets marketing excellence. I'm your host, Sara Payne, and I'm bringing you fascinating conversations with some of the industry's top marketing minds. Today's episode is a little different, but I think it might just challenge you in the best way. My guest is Mark Ostrom, founder of Joy Collaborative, a nonprofit that creates custom-designed environments called Joy Rooms for youth with life-limiting conditions. These aren't just renovations, they're transformations, designed spaces that foster independence, dignity, creativity, and joy. Now, you might be wondering what that has to do with health marketing. The answer is quite a lot, actually. In healthcare, trust isn't just built on messaging, it's built on experience. It's built in the moments that feel human. And if we're not shaping that experience as marketing leaders, no campaign will ever be enough. So Mark and I are going to talk about how to build a grassroots movement with brand level impact, why designing for the whole person and the family around them matters so much in healthcare, and what healthcare marketers can learn from a nonprofit that earns trust, not by telling stories, but by changing them. So let's get into it. Mark, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sara. It's a thrill to be talking to you today.
Likewise, let's start off with Joy Collaborative. Can you tell us how it all began and what exactly a Joy Room is?
I'm not going to give you my full background because we might be here longer than your podcast allows, but I'll jump to kind of where it really started. And that was me working in the commercial design field and really not feeling very satisfied. I had the idea for a pediatric focused design firm when I was in college, which for those of people who can see me was, a few weeks ago. And I could not find anybody doing that kind of work other than one woman in Israel. And I thought, well, then I'm crazy or she's rich or something. And I thought, there's people more mature in this industry than I. So if they haven't started it, then I must be nuts. And so it took me, a number of years of pulling it off the shelf and going back and forth. And finally, one day I kind of hit the wall with my career. And I just said, I'm just going to call up Make-A-Wish and just see what we can talk about. And
Wow.
they said, your timing is kind of surreal because we just had designers step off of a project and we need somebody. And they started telling me about it. It's a super challenging project. And it was for a young person with charge syndrome, and charge, every letter in charge is for a condition that the person has. It's like 1 in 700,000 prevalence. So super rare genetic disorder. Kodiak was blind, deaf, cognitively delayed, GI issues, a whole host of things. And when we got done with creating a sensory room, basically a multifunctional space for him and his family, his dad pulled me aside, and his dad is this big burly, security installer, and pulled me aside and said, I need to share something with you. Last week, Kodiak had 2 friends over to his house. That has never happened before, and he's 15.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So that's all I ever needed to hear, Sara. It's like a movie I play in my head all the time.
Wow.
And I thought, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, this is taking the power of design and it is delivering it to people in a very meaningful way. This isn't decoration. Other people can do that. This is leaning hard into very difficult solutions, to the point now where we're doing clinics, we're doing larger scale spaces than just single family homes. So we can talk more about the future of Joy.
Yeah, such a cool story, so inspiring, and kudos to you for following your heart and going to this need, because clearly it's having an impact in a very big way. And I got goosebumps just hearing you tell that story of one child and one family that you have impacted through all of this. And one of the things that I really love about the work that you do is that it is so deeply personal and yet scalable in its impact.
Mhm.
And you're not a healthcare brand, but you're
Right.
working at the heart of healing for these people. What does it mean to you when you think about this concept of treating the whole person? What does that mean to you?
Before I started this, I did a little bit of research, and there were designers out there that would, throw a poster on a wall and put a comforter down and, call that a magnificent space. And I'm like, That's great. That's better than nothing." But people who are struggling every day, like, I'm not quite sure that that really solved a problem.
Mm,
And when I, kinda drafted the concept for the company, it was like we fall in between, Make-A-Wish or those kind of wish granting organizations where, they historically have done, celebrity meet and greets or travel adventure, things like that. And, the other end of it would be Habitat for Humanity and building, great space for people who have need. And I'm like, "Wait a minute, there's like a spot in the middle here for people who have issues every single day that
mm.
need permanent solutions." And, I have amazing friends in the design and build industry, and I lobbed the idea to them, and I said, "What would you think if rather than, you had just done a Feed My Starving Children or you just brought a meal to Ronald McDonald House?" I'm not disparaging them by
Of
any
course
means. They're
not. Of
amazing
course not.
organizations. But I was like, we've got this need in our backyard. 1 in 5 families are caring for somebody with a disability. Like, just think about that. And you have amazing skills. So
Yes.
why are we taking your energy over here when maybe we could be planting it in our backyard? And so that is the collaborative Enjoy Collaborative. And that, not only is it designers, but it's the people who fund us as well. But I mean, it's really surrounding who's ever at the center with some very serious work. And to your point earlier about, problem solving and digging deep. I mean, we ask some really uncomfortable questions at times when we're doing our programming discussions. And these can take courses of, weeks or months to really get to some of the heart of some of the problems we're solving for, because some of it is very difficult. Some of it is very challenging. Some of it might be embarrassing to talk about. But I'm telling you, if we're doing a space for you, and I don't know about your toileting routine because you have spina bifida,
Right.
that's a big deal in your life.
Big deal.
And if you can't be open with us and talk about it, then we're just not gonna have a great solution. So, I do challenge our design teams to really raise the bar as high as they can and really dig into those questions, because a lot of these people haven't dealt with these specific issues before, but that's the only way we're gonna have a great solution is to talk about it.
The word that's coming to mind for me as you're talking is personalization. And personalization is a big, important, I don't just want to call it trend, but best practice in marketing as well, right?
Mhm.
Cam, your work is more effective when it is specifically designed, personalized for the individual, right? You have both that, I wanna call it a luxury, but sort of a luxury in the ability that you are designing for that one individual and their family and their specific needs. And marketers think about this too in terms of how can we deliver more personalized approach, messaging, stories in our
Yeah.
campaigns that are gonna
Mhm.
resonate, with people. So that really resonated with me when you were saying that. Um in healthcare marketing, we also talk a lot about patient experience, but we don't talk about the spaces
Oh.
people experience.
Mhm.
And so what can you say about how environment influences how patients and families feel about their care and their healing journey? And what do you think marketers could learn from that or be inspired by
Uh,
from that?
I, to take along what you just said, like, I use the term tune because my philosophy is we're all energy, and so we need to tune that space to what frequency it is that resonates with you.
Love that.
So, I can give you a great example. I was just there the other day at the Bridge for Youth. It's a homeless shelter for youth under the age of 17, as young as 10,
Wow.
where, early on, well, you didn't have to interview the youth to understand that their space was depressing. So, I mean, the space hadn't been touched for at least 10 years. They had sofas that were ripped. They didn't have legs. I mean, it was just they had an art program and there was stuff just scattered everywhere. It was you took these young people who come from a very traumatized background and you put them in a space that's chaotic.
Mm,
And the intent is
mm.
to build trust. Like, that's step 1. Step 1 is we need to build trust with this person, and this we have just, like, over accelerated the anxiety or experience that they already had before they even came in the door. And so now, years later, now that the project is complete, they rave about, so the issue in a space like that is, we can't leave those kids unsupervised. Youth, I should say youth. Can't leave the youth unsupervised. There's always need to be eyes on them, but yet they want refuge and they want safe space. And sometimes they need privacy.
Yeah.
Well, we happen to find these really cool chairs that were kind of a high back, not really, sort of, that are comfortable enough. They're commercial grade, so they can be hosed down, wiped down. I mean, there's a lot of durability issues that we need to
Sure.
do in commercial space. But every time I meet with them, they're like, man, those chairs are awesome. We can face them around. We can face each other. We can, that one move is huge. And I had no idea the result that was going to have on the well-being of these people. Not only that, not only the youth, but the staff as well, because they talk about how great an experience they're having to customize that space. They tune that space to themselves.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I love that word tune, and what you're saying here is also just triggering additional things for me. One is the importance of research, really truly listening to the audience that you're trying to reach, observing, right? Part listen, part observe, the realities. But then you were also talking about, so the original question is sort of what is the role of environment in how people feel about their care, about their healing journey. And there can be, you talked about a disconnect, right? For the youth that were walking into that space, right? We're trying to create a place of trust, right? And they're coming from a very difficult reality in their life, and we can't have them walking into a space that feels chaotic, or we're not going to achieve our objective. And I just think about that in terms of messaging and campaigns that we might put out into the world. Of course, we can't always, rarely control that reality of where someone is going to be when they are consuming our podcast episode, right? Are they driving in rush hour traffic, bumper to bumper, and they're stressed out, right? We can't control that. But if we think deeply about some of the things we know that they are experiencing in a health condition, in some other, knowing demographically some things about various things that might be juggling in their lives, I think there's a whole realm of empathy that could be brought in. Sorry, go ahead. You jump in on this one.
You're channeling it all, Sarah. It's amazing. You're hitting right on it, because it's all about choices. It's all about resources and choices. And we're just starting construction now in a project for M Health, for outpatient adolescent health. It's a rare moment, Sarah, in a discussion like this that I don't break down a little bit, because it is so painful to look at. And maybe I shouldn't mention the facility specifically, but they're not alone. Your audience has seen these spaces, and this is outpatient mental health. These are young people struggling with all kinds of issues.
Yes.
And we put them in a beige space that looks like a concrete bunker. And we expect them to heal. We expect them to build friendships. We expect them to have fun and grow in a space you or I would not want to spend 5 minutes in. And that's their reality every day for months. So for us to be able to work, thankfully, under the Thielen Foundation, and when I mentioned resources, to take a space and completely transform it to an active, quiet, multisensory, physical, tactile, emotional experience, I cannot wait for that project to get done. And that is kind of the drum that we beat on a lot of projects, is how many elements can we incorporate that resonates, that tunes that environment to that population. And not only that population, but that staff, that parent, that, again, I mentioned the ripple effect. Like, what we're doing isn't just centered around a single person. Yes, you might have a common demographic that you need to address in the case of their, outpatient population, but there's a lot of commonalities that we can hopefully bring in the power of great, experiential design.
Yeah, and this kind of tees up where I was going to go next is you aren't just working with the individual patient, if that's the right word, depending on who you're serving, but
Right.
you're also working with families, caregivers in the broader sense. And I think sometimes we can overlook caregivers or the people surrounding the
Yeah.
individual. What have you learned about serving sort of that broader family or community unit, caregiving unit through your work?
It's a team sport. Hopefully it's a team sport. Hopefully, if you have some kind of condition in your family, you've got some support around you. It might just be yourself. It might be, a relative. It might be some community, but that is hypercritical because the demands on these families. I'll give you an example of Hans, our amazing 7-year-old who was denied oxygen during birth. So brain
Mm.
damage and a whole bunch of other conditions that are, he's not going to recover from. And the space was working against this family, and they wanted to build community because they knew how isolated this kid was. Even though he didn't have a lot of, communication skills, I mean, there was an essence to him that really wasn't getting fed when he's stuck in his medical bed underneath a giant television 23 and a half hours out of the day.
Wow, yeah.
So then, when we, go through the project, we interview as many people as we can who, there's neighbors, there's cousins, there's a whole bunch of people who want better for him. There's the 24/7 in-house care team that is trying to chart in a lazy boy and a TV tray. I mean, it's
Mm.
absurd. It's absurd and it's disgusting. So, we get done, we create, great space for the nursing staff. We create a great space for him that's flexible, that's multifunctional. You can go on our website, you'll see all the amazing images. But what do I hear from the mom, when we get done with the project? She says, you showed us how to be a family again.
Mm. Wow.
Nothing we had ever talked about, but that's how important it was for them to see their son surrounded by community, whether it was, their in-home community or people at large coming in to spend time with their son who they love dearly.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things coming out of that. I think it's a good reminder for marketing leaders listening that caregivers are an important part of their target audience for any campaign that they're doing, designing messaging, designing support programs that are just for the patient really miss that bigger opportunity. And then the other thing too, Mark, is you're talking about this. We're going back to sort of the whole person conversation again. And when you were talking about, I don't remember exactly how she said it. You taught us how to be a family again. Is
Yeah.
that the way
Mhm.
she phrased it?
Yep.
Um, it, it just reminds me that whatever someone is going through from a health perspective, or even if it's not B2C and it's B2B, but we're talking about targeting clinicians and the burnout that there's a lot of burnout in the
Mhm.
industry and the stress that they experience. We are all human. And regardless of that thing, whether it is a condition, whether it is burnout, creates additional emotional,
Mhm.
I'm gonna call it baggage. We all it's maybe not the right word, right? But stress, and to think about the work that we're doing to address not just conditionally, right, the problem to be solved, but that bigger reduction in stress, right? And
Yeah.
that burden someone might be carrying with them related to all of that.
One of the reasons I started the company is I had when I was in college, I worked for the cleft palate clinic at the
Mm,
University of Minnesota, and I was in the insurance office filing claims, and they were historically denied, dental and medical, bounced back and forth. But to be able to rally on behalf of these families and get to know them personally and be able to slip a check to them and say, "Hey, we got your, 5-figure claim paid," or whatever, and they start crying.
mm.
And I'm like, "What just happened here?" And they said, "Well, we barely made our mortgage." So,
Mm.
for me, starting this, like, I didn't know everything around cerebral palsy. I didn't know everything around, mental health for children. But if you don't spend deep time with these folks and ask the questions like I mentioned, you don't really understand them, because some of these families are lucky, if it's a couple, do they have 2 incomes? If they do,
Right.
how are they juggling all of the demands for raising somebody with a disability? If you go down to 1 income, what does that mean? If your person has, 3 different specialty providers, what does that do to your work life? There's a lot of pressure behind what you see, and it's really hard on these families. It's really hard. It's taxing on them, obviously, financially, emotionally, socially, the dynamic in their own home. What if you have other kids that are getting all, that aren't getting the attention? There's a lot on that weighs on them. So, like I mentioned, 1 in 5 families. So it's very pervasive. You don't really have to go very far to find somebody with a disability, which is tragic, but it is the truth. And it it sounds like a weird thing to say, but that's an amazing opportunity for a company like ours. And I don't mean that in a gross, disgusting business
No,
development way.
no.
There's just so many beautiful problems waiting to be solved.
Yeah, I love the way that you put that, and this is just the timing of this is very serendipitous because, we just recently recorded an episode about, disabilities, people living
I
with
listened to it.
disabilities,
Mhm.
and, the prevalence of ableism in healthcare marketing, and I think this is a nice complementary episode to that conversation in understanding sort of the bigger picture.
And
Um
and and being able, Sarah, to rise up. Like, we're not shoving people in institutions anymore. We're not
Right.
not allowing them in public
Yes.
anymore, which was a thing. Like, let's shine a great light on them. Let's show what's possible with these amazing people. Let's give them a better outlook than what they had yesterday before they met us. Like, come on. Like,
Let's adapt
there's some
let's be
skills.
adaptive to them,
There's some
not
beautiful gifts out
yes.
there waiting to be shared, and we don't know what they are yet, but I'm telling you they're there.
I wanna switch gears just ever so slightly. Your organization started as a grassroots effort, but you've really built tremendous partnerships with designers, builders, donors, sponsors.
Mhm.
What advice would you give to someone trying to build a movement, a campaign that is authentic, it's community powered, but it has, this common thread of passion, that all these different stakeholders can align around.
I can only give you some examples, and that, for me, it all comes back to alignment.
Yes.
I can talk to somebody who's doing food insecurity, and if it doesn't resonate, we're not on the same page. But, when I brought our first project to Gardner Builders, who's been a fan ever since and a supporter ever since, and we just saw eye to eye, and they saw how important it was for this family, it made it so much easier, and it made it so much fun. The challenge was incredible, don't get me wrong, the challenge was difficult. But man, when you can lock arms with somebody and then to do projects again and again, you build community in that way, you build trust, you build fans, and it's the most fun thing ever. I mean, as long as I'm not in QuickBooks, I'm having the best day ever. And we've tapped into something that's really fantastic. And to your point, yeah, we do have followers now. We have an amazing volunteer base, and we're doing our best with email and social and all those things. But we're still a company of 1 FTE, which we are working hard to, again, build those partnerships so that they understand, like, what we could do with a team.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a team and they're volunteers. Well, good luck managing volunteers at times. I love the volunteers, bless them all, but it's not the same kind of commitment
Right.
as a staff that you can oversee and have regular, discussions around and common goals together.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so I think it's a great reminder around what you're speaking about as a shared purpose, shared ownership with these different, stakeholders that are involved when you're building a grassroots effort.
I mean,
Um
let me just I need to kick this one in here too, because
Yeah.
it's amazing to me. So we finished a project, and the one of the builders came up to me afterwards, the trade cabinet guy came up to me and he said, "Thank you." And I said I was gonna get emotional, but it's like, I had no idea how this was touching other people. Yes, our clients, our recipients, I knew what was doing for them, but it blows my mind
Mm.
when our volunteers come up to me and thank me, because 'cause I'm like, "Without you, we're nothing.
Right.
We get nothing done without you, so why are you thanking me?" But boy, I'm telling you, it's really profound. We our Joy Mobile, we can talk about that, was invited to the state fair, and we had, 150 volunteers, and I tell you, every single one of them had a profound story of an experience with a guest, but a good chunk of them thanked us for the opportunity, and it just floors me every time that they see the need that we're solving for, and they wanna help move everything forward.
I believe that. I believe that, and I think it's really kudos to you for being able to, communicate the purpose and the impact and to
Mhm.
let them into that, right? Like, they may or may not have the opportunity to interact with that family, right?
Correct.
And but you are still articulating that purpose and that impact to them, and they can it's palpable.
And
It's
it's
palpable.
really personal because, again, because of the prevalence, most people have an understanding of what a better life can look like. And if we can be a part of that, man, that we just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, and I have seen this in marketing campaigns as well, where key opinion leaders with a shared purpose for the objective, it's likely something like educating somebody about something that their life could be improved if they knew
Mhm.
this thing, right? And you can see people, I don't wanna say come out of the woodwork, but, make themselves present
Mhm.
when you are projecting that purpose, where they will raise their hand for it. And there doesn't have to be an exchange of dollar
Nope.
value, right? They can, in essence, volunteer their time as a key opinion leader to help scale a message, to be part of a webinar to educate people about
Yep.
something. And I had same thing, Mark. I have seen them come out the other side and not ask, where is the check for my time
Right.
to lead that webinar. They say
Mhm.
to us, thank you for letting me be a
Mhm.
part of this. Because I have seen firsthand how this particular issue inside of healthcare impacts all these people over here, and I feel privileged to have been a part of this movement.
When my wife and I do our daily download, once a week for sure, I'll be like, "Vera, you will not believe what happened today." And she's like, "Oh, here we go again." Every week, I get a new surprise, and it's glorious and wonderful, and sometimes it's exactly what we need, and sometimes it's a whole new opportunity, struggle, gem that's just waiting to be explored, and it's so cool now that, we're getting a little bit more recognition, and people start understanding, the power of what we're doing, and they wanna get on board, and that's I nothing I had ever expected, and it's thrilling to be in a room full of those people.
Yeah, for sure. Just to dive a little deeper on purpose, one thing I hear a lot from healthcare marketers is that their brands want to be known as purpose driven.
Mhm.
But let's be real, that can fall flat if it's not genuine.
Mhm.
So, from your perspective, what does purpose in action actually look like?
When we start a project, there's a vetting process that happens, and, we interview them, we get a survey form, we get photographs of whatever's happening, and then we'll bring our design team together. And a lot like I said, a lot of these folks, like, they come with passion, but they don't necessarily have practice. And so then we need to punch a bunch of holes in the application that we have and start asking some questions that, like I said, some are really uncomfortable.
Mm.
But you need to know, like, well, just because you have adaptive bikes, are they working? Does your population even use them? Well, what happens in dark hours when maybe you could be offering your same space up to kids who aren't your young adults using the space during the daytime?
Mm,
So I think purpose and action for me, the purpose part is getting to the heart of as many problems that we can solve for as possible. Sometimes you can't solve everything, right? We're not going to solve somebody's, genetic condition,
right.
but we certainly can ask them, well, you told us this is working okay. Well, what could be better? Or, oh, you mentioned this thing in passing. Let's dig into that and find out, is there a place for it in this project? Or here's some crazy big old ideas that we would have never thought of, but maybe there's some relevance here. And to me, that's purpose. That is the design professional's job, is to really make sure that they are exploring as much as possible and not just jumping to the rendering, because that's very common.
Mm,
And jumping to the rendering means you may not be thinking about
yeah.
the problem at hand. So I don't know if I've really answered your question, Sarah, but for me, the purpose is it's just doing the best to put your head into their shoes and really understanding what we can make better.
Yeah. Understanding the problems to be
Mhm.
solved for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
Um, Before we wrap, can you share, you've shared a couple of really amazing stories, but can you share a joy room project that really stuck with you, or one that reminded you why this work really matters?
I'm going to ask you a question first.
Sure.
If somebody that you loved got a diagnosis, fill in the blank, whatever it is, what's the first thing that you would do?
Besides cry.
Maybe.
Like an action item that I would
Yeah. What
take?
would you do?
Oh, man. Um, I mean, I think I would call family, right? And assemble a community, a support system.
Right.
Um, right?
Yeah.
And then put together the action plan of what's next?
Right.
What's the course of treatment? What's the, what do we need to do next? But I think the first step is to call your community.
Right. It probably isn't to renovate your house.
No.
And so that's where we come in, right? You're not distracted, you're focused on building community, finding the helpers, all of those things, because now all of a sudden you've got a new hat you need to wear. And all of these things are coming at you. There's language that you don't even understand because of what might be happening at the time. So if we can come in and be auxiliary helpers to you, like that's what we want to do. But rather than talk about a past project, I want to talk about an upcoming project, because I'm losing sleep over it right now, and that's
Mm,
usually a good sign. Um, so I mentioned our Joy Mobile, which is a mobile sensory experience that came out of working with Prairie Care, who serves mental health, youth with mental health issues in the state of Minnesota, and they wanted us to work with public schools to see if we could help them create sensory spaces in schools. Well, we talked to a couple. They were specifically interested in Minneapolis public schools. Well, they didn't have space to give up. They need classroom space. We'd be lucky to get a janitor's closet,
yeah.
which isn't going to help anybody. And so we said, well, hey, bookmobiles, bloodmobiles, how about a sensory mobile? And they said, give it a shot. And so we did that. Um, Shortly thereafter, get invited to the Minnesota State Fair, which blew my mind. Somebody who's been a fair favorite forever. And we saw all these, 2,000 people and, during the heat and the cold and whatever. And it was really profound to see people finding sensory relief in 5 minutes.
Wow.
And I'm not exaggerating. We have the data to support that. And so where I'm going with that is we get a call from Affinity Plus, who we have lunch then with the executive director of Special Olympics Minnesota, who wants us to create a 4 times larger version of the Joy Mobile for the USAA Games coming in 2026 in Minneapolis.
Wow.
So we are just on the front of starting a brand new project that will support multiple people at the same time on a scale that we've never served before.
Wow. Now I
And
see why
it's
it's keeping you up at night.
it is so exciting. It is so exciting, and it never would it have been on our radar. But again, like I said, these jewels come to us, and there's no way that we were gonna turn that down. Now, do we have a pipeline of projects? Yeah, unfortunately, we do, and that's never gonna end. But until we can, build up to a serious staff who can take these design projects on, we have to be very selective about what we can do.
Yeah.
And that's the other part that keeps me up because it drives me crazy. But, you know, the problem is so pervasive and the need is so great. I know that we'll never be able to answer to everybody, but we certainly can answer to more than 4 projects a year, which is our current pace.
And
So,
hopefully creating a reality where others step into that need
yeah,
too, and eventually you aren't the only one or one of few. It
yeah,
becomes of many over time.
yeah, it's happening. By the end of the year, we will see more activation on that side because I'm working really hard on it and putting a lot of
Yeah,
affirmations out and talking to a lot of people about the understanding around, what we're surrounding ourselves with and who we can bring in to help.
that's amazing. Well, Mark, thank you so much for being here. And thank you even more than that for the work that you're doing to bring joy and dignity and connection to kids and families who need it most. Where can folks go to learn more about the work that you're doing and how to get involved?
I'm all over LinkedIn, so you can certainly find me there. Otherwise, it's joycollaborative.org.
Wonderful. And for everyone listening, if today's conversation sparked something for you about how your brand shows up, about what it really means to build trust, or about designing with purpose, I hope you'll take the next step. Support Joy Collaborative, share their mission, or start asking how your own campaigns can do more than inform, how they can uplift. Thanks for tuning into the Health Marketing Collective, where strong leadership meets marketing excellence, because the future of healthcare depends on it. We'll see you next time.